Hey there, happy Friday. This is your weekly astrology forecast for the week of July 13th through the 19th. I want to share with you the astrology of this week. I know I haven't done these in a while, but I felt inspired to go back to it. So what I will be sharing with you this week, the three things that are happening this week is Mercury will station direct. The Sun will oppose Jupiter, and we're also in the waning cycle of the moon. We have a new moon coming up in Cancer, so I'll speak about all of those things, and then I have some tips for you. But first, I wanted to kick things off a little different and pull a tarot card to set the tone for this time. So, as I'm going through, of course, I'm doing this live on Instagram, so you can leave a question here together, or if you're watching the replay, you can also leave a question as well. So, let's see. So this card that I'm pulling will be to set the tone for what we'll talk about today for this week. And advice, guidance, anything that we should know. So I always shuffle 3 times in a very particular way. Alright, I'm going to cut the deck. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, this is very appropriate. So I pulled the 4 of Cups, which, so I'm using a slightly different system, which I'll explain to you. This is the image of the card. And according to the system that follows the Golden Dawn system, which I've been playing with recently, this is the card that is about blended pleasure. And it is the card that is the moon in Cancer. So I think that's totally perfect and appropriate for us having a new moon in Cancer coming up. To give you the date, that new moon is happening on Monday the 20th. So it's happening slightly outside this week, but I did want to mention it because it's coming up. So new moon in Cancer, Monday the 20th at 10:32 a.m. Pacific time at 28 degrees of Cancer. So, but before we jump to that, so what I would say that this card symbolizes is that there's an emphasis on working with that lunar Cancerian kind of energy. And the 4 of Cups, to me, the blended pleasure shows that there's a variety of things to focus on, especially when it comes to pleasure, of course, but also like emotional resilience and emotional processing. So, we have Mercury stationing direct this Sunday, July 12th. So Mercury has been retrograde in the sign of Cancer for the last few weeks. And so this has been a time of emotionally processing and taking in new information that you've received over a long period of time and new in different ways, and processing that in a way that you are able to integrate and to digest information. So I'm curious how that's been for you. Do you feel like you've been able to do that? Have things changed for you over the last 3 weeks? So Mercury stationed retrograde, just to give you some context, on Wednesday, June 17th. And so Mercury has been retrograde in the sign of Cancer from June 17th until July 12th. And so when Mercury stations direct, this is a pivotal day, the direct station on the 12th of July, because we sort of have a moment where it's like, oh, okay, I can change things up a little bit. So what this might look like in more practical terms is this week moving forward, you may have more of a sense of clarity as far as what it is to do or where you want to go forward from here, the actions that you want to take based on reflections that you've had over the last 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks you may have found yourself looking back on things and either literally retooling things or just thinking about the way that you want to do things. So this week feels like a moving forward. The other thing that's happening this week is the sun, also in the sign of Cancer right now, is opposite Jupiter. Jupiter's in Capricorn. And so, so with Sun Jupiter, this is an emphasis around wanting to expand and wanting to expand your horizons, wanting to expand your knowledge, wanting to expand your presence. So what that may look like is desiring for learning new things, wanting to explore different things in your life, wanting to learn more, wanting to just, like, with Sun Jupiter, there's this hunger for life. And the other piece of this too is that we're in the waning cycle of the moon this week, and so that is the third thing that's happening this week, is we're in this this cycle of letting go and release and allowing for things to fall and allowing for things to there's like a sense of surrender within the waning cycle of the moon. So I'm going to pause for a moment, take a drink of coffee, and I see some new people joining. Let me know that you can hear me okay. And if you can hear me, let me know, or leave a little emoji, and let me know where you're tuning in from. I always like to hear that as well. So, okay, good. Hi, everyone. And if you have questions about this upcoming week, let me know. So, also moving forward this coming week with the waning moon, I do think it is kind of like a big sigh of relief as we're transitioning out of the eclipse season. So this coming lunation will not be an eclipse. It's too far away from the nodes. And so I think that when we have eclipse season, it's kind of like, it's like a bell curve. Like there's this amping up, like you're going up the roller coaster, and then there's a peak, and then things smooth on out. And so I think the timing of us transitioning out of the eclipse season this week, and then also with Mercury stationing direct, I do think that this week it's going to feel more like you're like, all right, things are getting in my direction. I know I don't necessarily have, it may take you time and effort to go where you want to go, but you have a sense of direction and a sense of clarity this week. The other thing too is that the sun opposite Jupiter this week can show where there's a feeling of more confidence. Now I want you to be careful with this, because sometimes the sun opposite Jupiter can show where there's like a too much confidence, like having not too much confidence, but like being like, oh, it's gonna work out, it's gonna be fine, I'm not gonna worry about it. And we can get into trouble when we do that sometimes. So especially because Mercury is in this transition phase of going from retrograde to direct, do make sure that you are thorough, make sure you double check things. Be certain that you are doing all of the things that you need to do. And then the sun Jupiter, I feel, does bring a sense of like a little boost of confidence. Hi, tuning in from Spain. Hi, Fine Joy. Hi, Jennifer. Hi, Pacific Nerd. Hi, Katie. Let's see. Okay, so I have some tips for you. So tip number 1 this week is to make space for yourself to process. I think this is really important when we're coming out of a Mercury retrograde process. And I think that the ability to like process and digest information is like, it's not played up as much as it should be. I think that it's important for us to have time and space to process things, especially so this week. So allow that time for yourself, whether that is a little extra time in the morning or before you go to bed, to just think about the big picture of your life and where you're going, what you want for yourself, new information that has come to you that maybe is changing the way that you want to proceed in your life. So that's tip number 1, to make space to process. Tip number 2 is to release and let go of something. So this goes with the waning cycle of the moon. So whenever the moon is waning, it is this emphasis on letting go, surrender, and being discerning, like knowing that you only have so much time. It's more about the exhale of life versus the inhale. So that's tip number 2, to release and let go of something. Tip number 3 is to be specific about your actions this week. So I think that when we are in the waning cycle, when we have Mercury retrograde, energy can be a little bit lower, and like physical vitality. And with the Sun Jupiter, it may feel like you want to do everything. And so with Sun Jupiter, we can tend to bite off more than we can chew. So I want you to be very specific about what it is that you want. Like everything that you do, whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, because you're a finite human being. You may be a spiritual divine human being, but you are in a finite body and there are only so many hours in the day. So you benefit this week from being very specific and deliberate on how you spend your time, where you focus your energy, and that will help you to, especially with Sun Jupiter, to channel that energy. So let me know if you have questions. I want to go back to the card that I pulled at the beginning as we talk about the new moon. So again, the new moon is Monday, July 20th, and it's happening at 10:32 a.m. Pacific time at 28 degrees of Cancer. So the other piece of this too is that so new moon in Cancer is about nurturing, it's about processing emotions, it's about having a sense of emotional authority, emotional autonomy, and having a sense of nurturing for yourself and for others. Now, this new moon is opposite Saturn. And so Saturn is about devotion, it's about restriction, boundaries. It is about success that comes over diligence over a long period of time. And Saturn also reveals to us the places where we might be cutting corners and where that really doesn't benefit us by doing that. And so even though the bulk of this week we're in the waning moon, I want you to be thinking about for planting seeds for the new moon, where is it that you want to move forward around issues of taking care of yourself, like nurturing yourself, but also at the same time incorporating that Saturn of meeting your own needs. And how you can take responsibility for yourself without taking responsibility for others. I think that is a big new moon in Cancer theme, is being responsible to yourself, being an authority to yourself, and not looking to other people to take on responsibility for your emotions, for your being. Like, yes, we can be interconnected. And at the end of the day, you receive more support when you are supportive of yourself initially. And so I'm going to bring up the card again. So this is the Four of Cups. And the way I'm reading this is, it's called Blended Pleasures. I think it's interesting too that the Four is a card that's the Four in numerology is about structure and stability. Carl Jung saw the number 4 as a number of the higher self or the soul. I think that he borrowed that from the I Ching. The I Ching works very much with the number 4 and sees it as a number of the divine. Let's see, Jennifer asks, am I hosting a new moon reading this month? Yes, I am. Thank you for asking. I almost forgot to mention that. So I'm hosting a new moon goal setting guide class this Friday, the 17th at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So you can find out more about that on my website, ShaunaMcGrathAstrology.com, or the link is in my bio on Instagram. It's $25 and you get a little personal reading with me for the new moon based on your personal birth chart, and it's super fun. And we do a planning guide based on, it's actually based on Donna Cunningham's book, Moon Signs, where you plan out your intentions and your goals for the month, which I find is super helpful. Loving Angel says, I said no to someone's demand last night at work, and the response they gave me was, your heart isn't in the right place. Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think they said that? Were they trying to make you feel guilty? So side note, I don't want this to go, my goal is to keep these videos short and sweet. And before we transition out, to speak to that, when you set boundaries with people, especially if it's a new thing for you, or if it's a new thing for you setting boundaries with a particular person, it's not uncommon to get pushback. Some people see this as you're being tested. I don't really like that mode of thinking, because if you think of everything in life as a test, it can kind of be exhausting. But I think that when you get pushback from people, yeah, it's sometimes because they're like, hey, like, what are you doing? You're disrupting our normal dynamic. And sometimes it can't, like, sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes it's intentional. Loving Angel says, yeah, to make me feel bad. That was why they said that, to make you feel bad. So, I mean, yeah, I think this is where I would go with this. If you and I were sitting together and we were doing an astrology session, I would ask you, do you feel bad about that? Do you feel bad about saying no? Do you feel like your heart isn't in the right place? And so you may say yes or no. What the answer that you give me isn't important, but what is important is if you do feel bad or feel guilty, or you do feel like your heart is not in the right place, then we know that that is something for you to work out within yourself, not necessarily within that person, but that there's something there that they're hooking into. So they're able to make you feel bad because you already feel bad, if that makes sense. Now, if you are like, no, like, I don't feel bad, I don't feel that my heart is in the right place, and I do feel like I'm acting from a place of integrity, then you know that that person's comment is about them and it's not about you. So I hope that makes sense. I feel like that's kind of, that's like a helpful shortcut way if you set a boundary and someone gets upset with you. If you feel triggered by their upsetness, then it shows that there's something going on there. If you're like, wow, like, that's weird, I don't identify at all with what they're saying, then that shows that it's more something going on with them versus with you. Now, to take this even a step further, the third possibility is maybe you don't know. Maybe it feels really confusing and you do feel a sense of feeling bad or guilt, but it's not super clear. That to me would show that there's a need to connect with yourself and to work with the process of, whether we call it building a sense of ego or strengthening the ego or sense of self or differentiation or individuation. Those are all terms for the same thing of connecting to yourself, so that when you interact with people, they don't have to tell you who you are. You know who you are. Good question, loving angel. All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining me. Again, I'm hosting a new moon goal setting guide class this Friday, the 17th. It's at 7 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to join that, please sign up now, because I'm limiting it to 10 people maximum, so that I can give everyone personal readings and give you enough personal attention. Also, I am doing a free event for the new moon on Monday, the 20th. It's the day of the actual moon, and that I'm doing that with a very sweet astrologer friend who who goes by Emerald Astrology, and so that's happening on Monday at, I think, at noon. Yeah, so Monday the 20th at noon. I'll have all this info in the link in my bio on Instagram or on my website. But those are ways for you to connect with me. I'm wishing you a wonderful weekend, wonderful week ahead, sending you lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon.